Hey guys, tonight we slip through stone doors breathing steam, where every splash and cough echoes like memory itself. And you probably won't survive this without breaking at least one unspoken rule. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push against the heavy door, and it answers with a low groan, a sound that feels older than you, older than the city, like a throat clearing after centuries of waiting. The hinge complains, the iron sighs, and suddenly the outside world is gone. No carts, no shouting vendors, no dogs arguing with reality. Just steam. Warm, wet, alive steam, wrapping your face and filling your ears until even your own breath sounds borrowed. This is the first lesson of the Roman bathhouse. Sound arrives before etiquette. You haven't even taken a step, and already you are being told how to behave by the echo of stone. The floor beneath your feet is smooth, worn by thousands of souls that came before yours, and the soft slap of skin on marble is louder than you expect. You hesitate, because hesitation itself makes noise, a shuffle, a scuff, a telltale sign of someone new. Regulars glide. You, unfortunately, announce yourself like a dropped plate. Somewhere ahead, water splashes. Not a playful splash, not yet. This one is deep and confident, the sound of someone who knows exactly how much noise they're allowed to make. To your left, voices roll together in a low murmur, consonants melting into each other like wax. Latin, mostly, but also Greek, and accents you can't quite place. The bathhouse is a map of the empire, and your ears are tracing borders before your eyes catch up. Historians still argue whether Roman bathhouses were louder than modern gyms, but standing here, it feels like the comparison is unfair to both. This isn't music, this isn't chaos, it's a tuned environment, a symphony of acceptable disturbance. The stones catch every sound and return it softened, rounded, as if the building itself is trying to keep everyone calm. You inhale, and even that feels public. Breathing is audible here, especially at the threshold where hot air meets cooler lungs. A man near you exhales through his nose in a long, satisfied rumble, the ancient equivalent of a contented sigh after sinking into a couch. Another coughs, 3 short barks, and immediately someone else coughs back, not in sympathy, but in warning. That cough says, "Too loud, too sharp, too sudden, adjust yourself." You step fully inside, and the door closes behind you with a final authoritative thud. That sound seals the contract. You are now subject to the acoustics. The ceiling rises high, higher than you expect, and the steam floats upward, carrying whispers with it. This is why the first rooms are always noisy. The air is still learning how to move. Every drip from a pipe lands with a bright, clear tap, like a metronome trying to impose rhythm on humanity. Somewhere deeper in the complex, the water roars more steadily. But here, at the entrance, each sound is still separate, still introducing itself. A slave passes you, barefoot, silent, except for the faint brush of cloth against skin. You almost miss it, and that's the point. The quietest sounds belong to the people who are supposed to be invisible. You'll notice this again later when you start paying attention to the absence of noise instead of its presence. To your right, a group of men laugh, short, clipped bursts, carefully controlled. Laughter here is allowed, but only in doses. One man laughs too long, and the sound stretches awkwardly, like a yawn that doesn't end, and it draws glances. He stops abruptly. Silence snaps back into place like a stretched cord released. This is another rule you haven't been told yet. Silence is a communal resource. Waste it, and everyone notices. You move forward, and the temperature shifts by degrees you feel in your bones. The steam thickens, the echoes deepen, and now the sounds begin to layer. Footsteps overlap, voices blur, water becomes a constant low presence, like wind through leaves or traffic far away. The bathhouse hums, literally hums. Pipes vibrate gently inside the walls, producing a tone so low you feel it more than hear it. It's not accidental. Roman engineers understood resonance, even if they didn't have the word for it yet. They built these places to soothe bodies, yes, but also minds, and sound is part of that architecture. A mainstream fact slipped gently into your ear. Most Roman bathhouses were free or very cheap, paid for by wealthy patrons who wanted popularity. That means everyone is here. Senators, bakers, soldiers, freedmen, slaves. And sound is the great equalizer. You can't see rank in steam, but you can hear confidence. The way someone walks, the way they splash, the way they speak without checking who might be listening, these are the cues that tell you who matters. You try to copy them, stepping more softly, letting your breath slow until it matches the rhythm of the room. Already, the noise begins to feel less like an assault and more like a blanket. Somewhere, metal rings against stone, a bucket, maybe a striggle dropped. The sharp clang slices through the fog, and conversations pause for a heartbeat. Then, as if on cue, everyone resumes talking slightly louder than before, filling the gap. Silence is uncomfortable here. Noise reassures. A man near the wall clears his throat in a way that is definitely intentional. It's a signal. You don't know what it means yet, but you feel it land in your spine like a tap on the shoulder. Later, you'll learn that clearing your throat can mean everything from move aside to I'm about to do something embarrassing. Please pretend you don't see me. You smile to yourself because you realize, gently, slowly, that this place teaches you how to listen before it teaches you how to wash. And as you take your next step deeper into the steam, the echoes follow, wrapping around you, already shaping how you'll behave long before anyone actually tells you the rules. You linger just inside the threshold, not because you're unsure where to go, but because the soundscape keeps changing as your ears adjust, like a radio slowly finding the right frequency. At first, everything felt loud, almost rude. Now, with a few breaths, the noise sorts itself into layers, and you realize the bathhouse isn't loud at all. It's busy. There's a difference, and the building expects you to learn it quickly. A trickle of water somewhere above you begins to feel like a companion, a tiny, persistent voice reminding you that nothing here is still. Romans loved moving water, not just for hygiene, but because moving water meant moving time. Standing still was for statues and the dead. The living should flow, drip, splash, hum. You take another step, then another, and the echo of your own body becomes familiar enough that it no longer startles you. Your footfalls now land where you expect them to, and the stone responds with a softer tone, as if approving. That approval is imagined, of course, but historians still argue whether Romans consciously used sound as a form of social training or if the effect was simply an accident of architecture. Standing here, wrapped in steam and echoes, it's hard not to feel like the walls are teaching you something on purpose. The ceiling sweats. You hear it before you see it. Tiny plinks as condensation gathers and drops, each one landing with a polite, almost apologetic tap. No one reacts to these sounds. They're part of the background, like birdsong outside a window. But you react because you're new, and new people always notice the wrong things first. A faint scraping noise slides past your left ear. You turn thinking it's someone brushing by, but it's only a slave dragging a bundle of towels across the floor. The cloth whispers against the marble, a sound so soft it feels private, like hearing someone breathe in their sleep. You catch yourself holding your own breath, and then you let it out slowly, carefully, trying to match the hush of that fabric. That's when you realize every sound here has a social weight. Loud noises are statements, soft ones are apologies. Silence is negotiation. You hear laughter again, farther in now, deeper and richer, the sound bouncing off hotter walls. The bathhouse has zones, and each zone has its own acoustic personality. Near the entrance, voices are tentative, checking for permission. Deeper inside, they grow bold, relaxed, careless. You haven't earned that yet. Not until you undress, not until you submit to the rhythm. Ah yes, undressing. You almost forgot. The fact that you're still clothed feels suddenly absurd, like wearing shoes in a swimming pool. The sound of fabric on skin would be wrong here. Too loud, too dry. Already you can hear it. The rustle of tunics in the changing room, the soft thump of sandals hitting the floor, the faint clink of rings being removed and set aside. Those sounds are calling you forward, promising relief from this half-state where you belong to neither world. Before you move, though, something else reaches your ears. A long, slow exhale from somewhere behind you, followed by a satisfied grunt. Someone has just crossed from cool air into warm steam, and their body has answered out loud. No one comments. No one laughs. This, too, is normal. Bodies speak here, and everyone pretends not to listen. You smile again, a small private smile that no one can see through the fog, and you finally start walking, letting your steps fall in time with the water, the voices, the dripping ceiling. The bathhouse hum deepens, and the door behind you might as well have sealed itself forever, because already the outside world feels impossibly loud, impossibly sharp, impossibly lonely. And somewhere in the echo, you know you've crossed the first line, not a physical one, but an acoustic one, where you stop being a visitor and start becoming part of the noise. The moment you realize you're becoming part of the noise is the moment the noise stops bothering you. It's like when you stop hearing the fridge hum at home, or the distant traffic, or your own heartbeat in your ears. The sound doesn't go away, it just stops asking for attention. And here, in the bathhouse, attention is currency. You spend it carefully, or you go bankrupt in embarrassment. Your footsteps now land with a practiced softness, even though you've never practiced before. You lift your feet a little higher, set them down a little flatter. You don't know why you're doing this, but your body does. The marble responds with a duller, kinder note, and you feel oddly proud, like you've just learned your first word in a new language and used it correctly. Ahead, the sound changes again. The hum grows warmer, thicker, like the air itself is padding the echoes. This must be the edge of the apoditerium, the changing room, though no sign announces it. Signs aren't needed. The noise tells you everything. There's more rustling here, more soft collisions of fabric and skin, more murmured curses as someone drops something and tries not to draw attention to it. A ring clinks against stone, once, twice, 3 times, and then stops abruptly as someone's hand snaps shut around it. You imagine the expression on their face without seeing it. Bathhouses are famous for theft, and everyone knows it, even if no one says it out loud. The sound of metal hitting marble is panic distilled into a single note. You step fully into the changing room, and the temperature dips just enough to make your skin prickle. The acoustics shift too. The ceiling is lower here, the walls closer, so sounds bounce back faster, sharper. Conversations are quieter, but more intense, like secrets whispered into cupped hands. A mainstream fact slides into your awareness as naturally as steam into lungs. Romans bathed naked, regardless of class, and the apoditerium was where social hierarchies briefly melted away, at least visually. Sonically, though, hierarchies lingered. You can hear them in the confidence of movement, in the casual way some men drop their clothes without hesitation, letting fabric fall with a decisive slap, while others fold carefully, making almost no noise at all, as if trying not to be noticed by the room. You choose a spot along the wall and begin to undress. The sound of your own tunic sliding over your shoulders feels impossibly loud, like ripping parchment, and you pause halfway through, listening to see if anyone reacts. No one does. That's another rule. Everyone pretends not to hear you as long as you pretend not to hear them. You finish, fold your clothes with exaggerated care, and place them in a niche. The niche itself makes a hollow thump when you touch it, and you wince, but the sound disappears into the general murmur before it can betray you. Nearby, two men are talking, not loudly, not softly, but in that precise middle range that says they want to be overheard without being obvious about it. Their voices slide around each other, smooth and confident, discussing grain prices or maybe politics or maybe someone else's scandal. It doesn't matter. The bathhouse is where information goes to loosen up. Hot air and steam do things to tongues. Historians still argue whether business deals made in bathhouses were more trustworthy because they were made naked or less trustworthy because everyone was relaxed and distracted. Listening to the low, steady rhythm of negotiation happening 3 steps away from you, you suspect the answer is both. A child laughed suddenly, a sharp, high sound that cut through everything like glass. A dozen heads turned. The laughter stopped just as suddenly, replaced by a hasty shushing and the soft slap of a hand on skin. Not violent, just corrective. Children are allowed here, but their sounds are always on probation. You straighten, now fully unclothed, and feel the room hear you. Skin makes different sounds than fabric. It squeaks faintly against stone, whispers when you move, absorbs echoes instead of throwing them back. The bathhouse welcomes this sound. You are finally speaking its language. As you step away from the wall and toward the inner rooms, the rustle and clatter of the changing area fades behind you, replaced once again by that deep, resonant hum, the promise of heat, water, and 1,000 unspoken rules you're about to learn the hard way. You step forward, and the sound of your movement changes again, softer now, more absorbed, like the building is finally willing to keep your secrets. The air ahead grows warmer in slow degrees, and the hum deepens until it feels less like a noise and more like a presence. It's the kind of sound you'd notice if it stopped, the way you notice silence when the power goes out. The corridor narrows slightly, and that alone reshapes everything you hear. Footsteps stretch longer, voices bounce back quicker, and every splash from deeper rooms arrives as a muffled promise. You're walking toward the heart of the bathhouse now, and the building knows it. The walls feel closer, but not oppressive, more like hands guiding you gently forward, one echo at a time. A man passes you going the other way, and you hear him before you see him. The faint squeak of damp skin, the soft brush of arm against stone, the quiet but confident exhale of someone who has already been where you're going and survived. He doesn't look at you, and you don't look at him. That's etiquette too. Looking is louder than it feels. Somewhere ahead, water spills over a lip of stone in a steady cascade. It's not a splash, not a roar, just a continuous sound, like breath held forever. The Romans loved this sound. It meant the system was working. Pipes full, fires lit, slaves sweating somewhere behind the walls to keep the illusion alive. That quiet waterfall is the bathhouse's heartbeat, and your ears lock onto it instinctively, the way a baby locks onto a lullaby. You slow without meaning to. Everyone slows here. The closer you get to the hot rooms, the more the bathhouse insists on patience. Fast steps sound aggressive. Quick breaths sound panicked. The echoes exaggerate everything, so you soften yourself, stretching time with your movements, letting the noise of you melt into the noise of the place. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind, the kind of thing that sounds like a joke but isn't. Some Romans believed certain bathhouse sounds could cure ailments. The echo of dripping water was supposed to calm fevers. The hiss of steam was thought to ease melancholy. Even the murmur of conversation, layered and indistinct, was considered good for the soul, like being wrapped in human warmth without having to participate. You reach an archway, and the sound pours through it like liquid. On the other side, the caldarium waits. You can hear it breathing. Steam hisses from vents, water laps against stone, and voices drop to a low, reverent register, as if the room itself demands respect. The noise here is slower, heavier, every sound weighted by heat. You pause at the threshold, and you're not the only one. People hesitate here, just for a moment, listening. This is where mistakes are made. Entering too loudly, splashing too hard, letting the door thump instead of glide. You watch a man ahead of you make the transition perfectly, sliding into the heat with barely a sound, like a seal slipping into water. No one notices him. That's success. You try to copy him. Your foot crosses the line, and the heat wraps around your calf, then your knee, then your entire body, like a slow embrace. You exhale, quietly, carefully, and your breath joins the collective sigh of the room. It's almost musical now, a low chorus of human relief. Inside, the echoes are different, softer, rounder, as if the steam has padded the walls. Sounds don't bounce here, they settle. Even laughter becomes thicker, slower, stretching into the heat like honey. A man chuckles somewhere to your right, and the sound drifts across the room before dissolving completely, leaving only a smile in its wake. Historians still argue whether Romans considered the bathhouse a sacred space, a social one, or something in between. Standing here, listening to the way sound is treated, respected, controlled, shared, you suspect the answer is, it depends on the room, and it depends on who's listening. You lower yourself onto a warm stone bench, and the faint sizzle of skin meeting heat is almost imperceptible, but you hear it. Everyone does. No one reacts. The sound fades quickly, absorbed into the great hum, and you feel yourself sink into it, the noise carrying you the way water carries a floating body. For the first time since you entered, you stop actively listening. The bathhouse listens for you now. The bathhouse listens for you now, and that is both comforting and unsettling. Like realizing a room has been watching you the whole time and only just decided you're safe. You sit still, letting the heat work its way into your muscles, and the sounds around you thicken, slow, and blur at the edges. The caldarium is not quiet. That would be impossible, but its noise is deliberate, almost ceremonial. Steam hisses in soft bursts from hidden mouths in the walls, a sound halfway between a sigh and a whisper. Water laps lazily at the edge of a pool, never splashing, never demanding attention, just reminding you it's there. The people here speak differently too. Voices drop, not out of politeness, but necessity. Loud sounds feel heavier in hot air, like lifting weights with your tongue. So conversation becomes a low rumble, a vibration you feel in your chest more than hear in your ears. Words blur into tone, and tone into mood. You could be sitting next to a senator or a butcher, and you'd never know, not by sound alone. A man across from you clears his throat, gently, respectfully, and everyone within earshot registers it without reacting. Throat clearing in the caldarium is a request, not a demand. It might mean, I'm about to stand, or I need space, or forgive me, I exist. Someone shifts their leg to make room. Stone scrapes faintly. The request has been granted. You lean back against the wall, and the wall answers with warmth and silence. The stone here has learned how to absorb noise, how to keep secrets. Thousands of backs have pressed into it. Thousands of sighs have soaked into it. And now it hums at a frequency so low, it feels like sleep itself. This is the sound people come for without knowing it. Not water, not steam, but this gentle vibration that tells your body it can finally stop defending itself. A mainstream fact slips into your drifting mind. Roman bathhouses were heated by hypocast systems, with hot air circulating under the floors and inside the walls. You can hear it if you listen closely. A faint, steady whoosh beneath everything else, like a sleeping animal breathing. It's easy to forget how much labor it takes to create this illusion of ease. Fires must be fed, ash removed, vents adjusted. The noise of that work is hidden on purpose, because relaxation depends on ignorance. A slave kneels near the pool, refilling a bucket. You hear the water pour before you see it, a clean, bright sound that briefly cuts through the hum. He moves with practiced efficiency, and when the bucket touches the floor, he sets it down so carefully it makes almost no sound at all. You wonder how long it took him to learn that trick, to make himself nearly silent in a place built for echoes. Historians still argue whether slaves in bathhouses experienced a strange kind of intimacy with their masters, seeing and hearing them at their most unguarded. Watching this man move, hearing how he shapes the noise around him, you suspect the answer isn't simple. Sound, like power, flows downhill, and he has learned how to step aside before it reaches him. Someone laughs, a real laugh this time, not the controlled kind, and it ripples across the room, slow and warm, making a few heads turn and then turn back. Laughter is allowed here, but only if it sounds like relief. Sharp laughter, mocking laughter, the kind that cuts, that would not survive the heat. The room would swallow it whole or spit it back in disapproval. You close your eyes, and without vision, the bathhouse becomes even larger. The echoes stretch, the hum deepens, and time loses its edges. Minutes feel like moments, moments feel like dreams. You could sit here forever, listening to nothing in particular and everything at once. And somewhere, beneath the steam and the stone and the murmured voices, you hear your own breathing slow to match the building's, steady, patient, ancient, as if the bathhouse itself has decided to lend you its rhythm for a while. Your breathing matches the building's now, and that's when you realize the caldarium has changed you. Not dramatically, no revelation, no trumpet blast, just a quiet recalibration, like turning a dial until the static fades. You listen, and the bathhouse listens back, and for a while the exchange feels balanced. Then the sound of metal interrupts it. Not a clang, not a crash, just a faint scrape, the unmistakable whisper of a strigil being drawn across skin. It's a sound you didn't notice before, but now that you've heard it, you can't unhear it. All around you, that soft, rhythmic rasp emerges, one body at a time, like insects waking at dusk. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Pause. Oil and sweat being lifted away in thin ribbons, falling silently to the floor. This is another etiquette lesson delivered through sound alone. You don't scrape aggressively. You don't rush. The noise should be barely there, a suggestion more than a statement. A man near you scrapes too fast, too hard, and the sound turns sharp, almost angry. Someone coughs, a warning cough, and the scraping slows immediately, returning to the accepted rhythm. You smile again, because the bathhouse is full of these tiny corrections, these sonic nudges that keep everyone in line without ever using words. It's social media before social media, except instead of comments, you get coughs and shuffles and carefully timed silence. A quirky tidbit floats into your head, the kind that feels made up but isn't. Some Romans believed you could judge a person's character by how they sounded while bathing. A loud scraper was impatient. A splashy bather was arrogant. A silent one was suspicious. Sound, here, is morality made audible. You listen more closely now, picking out individual rhythms. One man scrapes slowly, meditatively, like he's counting breaths. Another hums under his breath, just loud enough to hear, just soft enough not to offend. The hum has no melody, just a tone, and it vibrates through the steam like a held note on a cello. No one stops him. The room accepts it. You shift your weight, and your skin sticks slightly to the stone bench before releasing with a quiet, almost indecent sound. It's small, but it echoes, and you freeze, heart jumping. No reaction. The bathhouse swallows it instantly, forgiving you. Still, you adjust, moving more carefully, letting your body glide instead of lift. Even sitting has etiquette here. Water ripples as someone steps into the pool. They do it correctly, slowly, letting their body sink without a splash. The water answers with a low, contented slosh, like a creature being fed. That sound is rewarded with silence, the room's version of applause. Historians still argue whether Romans were consciously aware of how controlled their bathhouse behavior was, or if it simply felt natural to them. Sitting here, surrounded by steam and echoes, you suspect they didn't think of it as control at all. It was comfort, predictability, the luxury of knowing exactly how loud life was allowed to be. A slave passes again, this time carrying oil in a small jug. You hear the liquid move inside it before you see him, a gentle slosh like water in a wineskin. He sets it down, and the jug's base kisses the stone with a muted thud, perfectly judged. Even objects learn the rules in this place. Time slides. You don't know how long you've been sitting, 10 minutes, an hour, a lifetime, because the sounds don't mark time the way clocks do. They loop, repeat, soften, and blend. The bathhouse exists in a permanent now, held together by steam and murmurs and the distant whoosh of the hypocaust breathing under your feet. Eventually, though, a new sound arrives, subtle but unmistakable. The faint splash of cooler water somewhere nearby, sharper, brighter, more alert. It cuts through the heat like a bell, and your body responds before your mind does, skin tightening, breath quickening. It's the call of the next room, the promise of cold, of shock, of laughter, and mistakes, and a whole new set of rules waiting to be learned. You open your eyes, listening to the sound grow closer, knowing, with a sleepy certainty, that the bathhouse is not done teaching you yet. The sharper sound pulls at you like a thread, and once you've heard it, you can't pretend you haven't. It's different from everything else in the caldarium, too crisp, too alive, like glass tapped with a spoon. Cold water has a voice the hot room can't muffle, and it travels. It slices through steam, through murmurs, through that deep, comforting hum, and reaches you with intent. This is how sound moves in the baths, you realize. Not evenly, not politely. It chooses its own paths, slipping through arches and corridors, announcing rooms long before you see them. The building is a maze for the eyes, but a map for the ears. You stand slowly, because standing quickly would be rude, and your joints announce the movement with faint pops that make you feel ancient and ridiculous at the same time. No one reacts. Everyone's joints pop here. The bathhouse is a conspiracy of aging bodies pretending not to notice each other. As you step away from the bench, your feet whisper against the stone, damp skin gliding with just enough friction to keep you honest. The echoes follow you again, but now they're softer, trained, like dogs that know your scent. Each step sends a message ahead of you. Someone is coming. Someone is listening. Someone is learning. The corridor leading out of the caldarium breathes cooler air toward you, and the sound changes immediately. Steam thins, echoes sharpen, and the hum loses some of its weight. It feels like waking up slowly, not all at once. Your ears adjust first, then your skin. A splash rings out, louder now, closer, followed by laughter, bright and unrestrained. Cold rooms allow that. They forgive noise. In fact, they expect it. The bathhouse is generous like that. Every space has its own personality, its own tolerance for human mess. You pause again, because pausing is always the right choice when you don't know the rules yet. From here, you can hear the frigidarium clearly, the slap of water, the sharp intake of breath, and the surprised yelps that people try and fail to suppress. It's a soundscape of shock and joy, and it travels far, curling around corners and slipping back into the hot rooms as a tease. A mainstream fact drifts up, carried by the echoes. Roman bathers often moved through rooms in sequence, warm to hot to cold, not just for pleasure, but for health. Doctors of the time prescribed it like medicine, and sound was part of the diagnosis. If you heard too much laughter from the cold room, it meant people were overdoing it. If you heard none, something was wrong. A man passes you, dripping, water pattering from his skin onto the floor in a rhythmic tap, tap, tap that fades as he moves away. You notice how the sound follows him, then disappears, swallowed by the stone. The bathhouse keeps only what it needs. Everything else it lets go. You step closer to the archway, and the cold air brushes your legs like a warning. Your skin tightens in anticipation, and the noise from beyond grows louder, brighter, almost electric. You can feel it in your teeth. Your ears ring faintly, like before a storm. Historians still argue whether Romans enjoyed the cold plunge or merely endured it for the benefits. Listening to the mixture of shrieks and laughter, you suspect enjoyment came later, after the shock, when the body remembered how alive it was. You haven't crossed the threshold yet. You're still in between, wrapped in fading heat, leaning into rising cold, and listening to both worlds at once. Hot air hums behind you, cold water sings ahead, and right here, in the narrow corridor where sound overlaps and etiquette blurs, you understand the first true rule of the bathhouse. Before you learn how to behave, you learn how to listen. And as you take one more step forward, letting the sharper echoes guide you, the building's voice shifts again, ready to teach you something new. You step through the archway, and the sound hits you before the cold does, a sharp, ringing splash that seems to snap the air itself in half. Someone has just plunged, and their body has answered with a noise halfway between laughter and surrender. The sound echoes up the walls, ricochets across the ceiling, and dissolves into a chorus of sympathetic winces and amused snorts. The frigidarium does not whisper, it announces. The temperature drops fast enough that your skin tightens like drawn fabric, and every tiny noise becomes louder, clearer, more honest. Water here doesn't lap, it slaps. It doesn't murmur, it shouts. Even the smallest movement sends a message across the room, and everyone hears it. That's the etiquette of cold. There is no hiding. You step closer to the edge of the pool, and your toes touch the water. The sound they make is almost comical, a tiny, pathetic splash, quickly swallowed by the larger noise of the room. Someone nearby chuckles, not unkindly. That sound tells you you've done it right. Testing is allowed. Hesitation is human. What's not allowed is drama. A man across the pool plunges without warning, and the water answers with a full-bodied crash that echoes like a dropped shield. Heads turn, eyebrows lift, and then nothing. No scolding, no comment. He's either brave or foolish, and the bathhouse lets the sound decide for him. Too loud, too sudden, too aggressive. The echo lingers just long enough to mark him. You ease yourself in more slowly, letting the water rise inch by inch, each movement creating a new sound, a new ripple that races outward and dies against stone. Your breath hisses through your teeth, and you try to keep it quiet, but the cold steals control. A short, sharp inhale escapes you, loud enough to hear, not loud enough to offend. The room accepts it. This is where you learn that etiquette isn't about silence, it's about proportion. Big sensations earn big sounds, small ones do not. The bathhouse understands this better than any rulebook. A quirky tidbit drifts through your mind, carried by the echoes. Some Romans believed the cold plunge could shock bad spirits out of the body, and the sudden cries of bathers were seen as proof the spirits were fleeing. Listening to the chorus of gasps and half-laughs around you, it's easy to imagine invisible things being chased out, splashing and shrieking as they go. You lower yourself fully into the water, and the sound changes again. Deeper now, more contained, like the pool is closing its mouth around you. The echoes soften under the surface, replaced by a gentle internal hush, broken only by your own heartbeat, loud in your ears. Above the waterline, the room continues to chatter and splash and laugh, but below it, there's a pocket of near silence, a private world no one else can hear. When you rise again, water sheets off your shoulders with a soft roar that lasts only a second before dripping away in delicate taps. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop lands on stone and announces itself clearly, like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence. You stand there, dripping, listening to yourself fade back into the general noise. Historians still argue whether the baths were meant to energize or calm the people who used them. Standing here, water cooling on your skin, heat humming faintly in your memory, you realize the answer is both, but not at the same time. The bathhouse teaches contrast, loud and quiet, hot and cold, alone and together. As you step away from the pool, your wet feet make sharper sounds than before, tiny slaps that echo more than you expect. You adjust, rolling your step, softening your landing, already adapting without thinking. The building is still training you, still tuning you, still shaping how you exist inside it. And somewhere behind you, the heavy door you entered through feels impossibly distant now, like a memory you can barely hear, replaced by water, voices, echoes, and the steady, ancient sound of belonging. You move away from the pool, water dripping from you in a fading rhythm, and the frigidarium slowly releases its hold. The soundscape changes with every step, from sharp splashes to softer taps, from laughter that rings to murmurs that settle. It's like walking out of a storm into a calm street, except the storm was controlled, expected, and oddly polite. Your wet skin makes you louder than you mean to be. Each step slaps faintly, each shift of weight whispers a complaint, and you become suddenly aware of how much noise a human body can make when it's freshly reminded it exists. Around you, others are going through the same recalibration, listening to themselves with mild embarrassment, then adjusting, then forgetting again. A man shakes his arms briskly, sending droplets flying. They land with tiny, scattered taps, like rain on tiles. No one reacts, but the sound lingers just long enough to say, "That was almost too much." He stops shaking. Lesson learned. The bathhouse corrects gently, but it corrects. You reach a stone bench and sit, and the water on your skin meets the warm air with a faint hiss, barely audible but intimate. It sounds like relief. The bench is cool compared to the caldarium, and your body hums as it adjusts again, nerves firing, then settling. Even that internal hum feels like part of the room now, like you've been tuned to the same frequency. Nearby, two men argue quietly, not with words, but with sound. One exhales sharply through his nose, a short, clipped noise that says impatience. The other responds by shifting his feet slowly, deliberately, letting the wet slap of skin on stone stretch out, saying, "I'm not moving." They don't look at each other. They don't speak. Eventually, the first man sighs, a long, theatrical sigh, and the second one moves, conflict resolved, entirely in the language of noise. A mainstream fact floats up unannounced. Bathhouses were among the few places in Roman cities where social mixing was not just allowed, but expected. That mixing was noisy by nature, but the noise had rules. Here you could be naked next to a senator and correct him with a cough if he splashed too loudly. Power softened in steam and water, reshaped by acoustics. You listen more carefully now because listening has become the activity itself. Somewhere a strigil scrapes again, slower this time. Somewhere else, oil is poured into a palm with a wet, hollow glug that sounds almost obscene before disappearing into rubbing hands. You hear the faint brush of skin on skin as someone massages their arms. The sound dry at first, then slick, then gone. A slave crosses the room with a bundle of towels, and the cloth whispers as before, a sound so soft it almost feels like a secret. You notice how everyone unconsciously lowers their voices when he passes, as if the room itself is making space for the quiet. You wonder if anyone realizes they're doing it. Historians still argue whether these sound-based behaviors were taught or absorbed, and watching the room bend around silence, you suspect no one ever explained them. They were learned the way children learn language, by immersion, by imitation, by fear of getting it wrong. A child splashes, not too hard, but harder than adults would, and laughter erupts, bright and uncontrolled. This time it's allowed. Children get more leeway. The bathhouse knows they're still learning, still loud, still full of sharp edges. The laughter echoes up to the ceiling and then drops away, leaving a smile in the air like a lingering warmth. You close your eyes again just for a moment, and the sound becomes texture. You can almost feel it brushing past your skin, settling on your shoulders, pooling at your feet. The bathhouse is no longer a building, it's an instrument, and you are one vibrating string among many, tuned just enough to belong. Somewhere deep in the walls, the hypocast sighs, a low, steady breath that underlies everything. It's the oldest sound here, older than the voices, older than the splashes, older than you. Fires burn, air moves, water flows, the same way it has for decades, centuries, and will as long as someone cares enough to listen. You open your eyes, and without deciding to, you stand. Your body knows where to go next. The sound will guide you as it always has, as it always will. And as you take your first step toward the next room, your wet feet quieting, your breathing steady, you realize something that feels both obvious and profound. You are no longer visiting the bathhouse. You are participating in it. And the building, pleased with your progress, hums on, ready for the next lesson. You move because the sound moves you. And once you accept that, everything feels easier. The bathhouse no longer feels like a place you're navigating. It feels like a current you've stepped into, carrying you gently but insistently forward. Your feet follow the softer echoes now, the ones that promise warmth without the weight of the caldarium, calm without the shock of the frigidarium. There's a middle space calling to you, and you can hear it before you see it. The tepidarium breathes differently. The air here is balanced, undecided, hovering between extremes, and the sounds match that indecision. No sharp splashes, no deep hums, just a steady, comfortable murmur, like a room full of people talking politely over dinner. Voices lift and fall, water drips lazily, and somewhere, someone's stomach growls, loud enough to hear, soft enough to ignore. No one reacts. Hunger is a normal sound. You step into this room, and your body relaxes all at once, like you've been holding a pose without realizing it. The soundscape spreads out, wider, airier. Echoes are slower to return, giving every noise a little more space to breathe. This is where people linger, where conversations stretch, where time dissolves into steam and small talk. You hear sandals being adjusted, leather squeaking faintly as someone slips them on, then off again, then decides against it. You hear fingers snapping once, a slave being summoned, and the sound is so sharp it makes you flinch. Immediately, the man lowers his hand, coughs, and murmurs something that sounds like an apology. Snapping is frowned upon. It's too commanding, too abrupt, too loud in its intent. The bathhouse prefers requests disguised as accidents. A slave arrives anyway, silent as a shadow, and you only notice him because the air shifts slightly, the way it does when someone steps close behind you. He carries oil, strigils, towels, the tools of transformation, and sets them down one by one, each object placed with care, each contact with stone softened, as if he's afraid of waking something. You realize you've been holding your breath, and you let it go slowly, quietly, so as not to interrupt his silence. A quirky tidbit floats up, the kind you'd laugh at if you weren't half asleep already. Some Romans believed bathhouse echoes could carry prayers to the gods more efficiently, especially when whispered into warm air. Listening to the murmurs around you, you wonder how many prayers are hidden in casual complaints about sore backs and gossip about neighbors. Maybe the gods didn't mind. Maybe they preferred it that way. You sit again, because sitting feels like the correct response to this room. The bench here is neither hot nor cold, just present, and when you settle onto it, the sound of skin on stone is barely audible, a whisper of contact that vanishes instantly. This is the room where noise goes to rest. Nearby, two men play at a game of knucklebones, the small pieces clicking softly as they roll across the stone. The sound is light, playful, and oddly soothing, like wind chimes made of bone. They keep their voices low, but their laughter bubbles up now and then, gentle and brief, like bubbles breaking the surface of water. No one minds. Games are allowed here. They belong to the in-between. A mainstream fact slips in like a footnote whispered aloud. Many Roman bathhouses included libraries, gardens, and exercise spaces, all connected by these transitional rooms. The tepidarium was the hinge, the pause, the breath between actions. Sound reflects that. It's the room where nothing demands, nothing insists. You notice something else now, something you didn't before. The bathhouse has a rhythm, not just a hum. Sounds come in waves, a burst of laughter, then quiet, a series of splashes, then murmurs, a chorus of coughs, then silence. It's not random, it's regulated by bodies, by heat, by fatigue. You can almost predict what will happen next just by listening. Historians still argue whether Romans consciously structured bathhouse movement to mirror the rhythms of the body, tension, release, balance, or if the architecture simply evolved that way because it worked. Sitting here, wrapped in balanced sound, you suspect intention had less to do with it than survival. People kept what soothed them. They discarded what didn't. A man nearby sneezes, a sharp, explosive sound, and immediately murmurs an apology, quiet and quick. Someone else mutters a blessing, barely audible, and the moment passes. Even illness has etiquette here. Even involuntary noise is negotiated. Your eyelids grow heavy, not with sleep exactly, but with that pleasant weight that comes before it, when the world narrows to breath and warmth and sound. You could stay here forever, you think, listening to the bathhouse breathe around you, letting the echoes carry your thoughts away one by one. And maybe you do stay for a while, long enough that you stop counting the splashes, long enough that the murmurs blur into a single soft blanket of sound, long enough that you forget where you are and remember only how it feels to belong to a room that asks nothing of you except that you listen. Eventually, gently, without warning, a new sound begins to reach you. It's faint at first, almost imaginary, the low clatter of wood, the scrape of benches being moved, the distant echoes of voices changing pitch. It's the sound of preparation, of transition, of time shifting gears. You don't know what it means yet, but the bathhouse does, and it's about to tell you. The sound of preparation creeps through the tepidarium like a rumor, not loud enough to interrupt anyone, but persistent enough to be noticed. Wood scrapes against stone somewhere down the corridor. Benches shift. A door opens and closes with a careful, deliberate thud. Not the heavy groan of the main entrance, but a controlled, practiced movement, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping house. You tilt your head slightly, listening, and you're not the only one. All around you, bodies adjust in small ways. A pause in conversation, a delayed splash, a laugh that stops half a second earlier than it would have before. This is how the bathhouse announces change. Not with bells, not with shouting, but with subtle alterations in its voice. Someone nearby mutters, "About time," under their breath, and the sound is almost lost in the murmur, but you hear it. The bathhouse hears it too. No one responds, which is its own response. Complaints are allowed only if they're quiet enough to be deniable. A slave moves through the room carrying a stack of wooden stools, and for once you hear him clearly. Wood knocks softly against wood with each step, a hollow, rhythmic clack that cuts through the blanket of sound. He's not trying to be silent now. This noise is permitted, even required. It tells everyone something is happening, but don't ask what yet. You feel the shift in your body before you understand it in your mind. Muscles that had melted into the bench begin to reassemble. Your spine straightens slightly. Your breath becomes a touch more alert. Sound does this. It rearranges you without permission. A mainstream fact, sliding in like a whispered aside. Roman bathhouses ran on schedules, loosely kept but socially enforced. Certain activities happened at certain times, and you learned the timetable not by clocks, but by listening. The scrape of wood meant benches being rearranged. The change in pitch of voices meant a room was filling or emptying. The sudden quiet of one area meant another was about to grow loud. Historians still argue whether most bathers consciously understood this sonic timetable or if they simply felt it and obeyed. Sitting here, watching the room lean forward in collective anticipation, you suspect no one ever thought about it at all. They just moved when the sound told them to. The murmur around you changes texture. It grows thinner, more directional as conversations begin to wrap themselves up. People speak in shorter sentences. Laughter comes in quick bursts instead of long rolls. Someone says a name, not loudly, but with intent, and you hear the soft shuffle of feet in response. That name pulls a body through the room the way a rope pulls a bucket from a well. You stand, and this time your body makes almost no noise doing it. The stone barely answers you. That's progress. You don't feel proud. The bathhouse doesn't reward pride, but you feel aligned, like a cog slipping smoothly into place. As you move toward the corridor, you pass a small group gathered around a man who's telling a story. His voice rises and falls in practiced arcs, and you realize with sleepy amusement that he's timing his punchlines to the acoustics. He waits for the echo to die before delivering the next line, letting laughter bloom fully before moving on. Even humor obeys the walls here. You catch the end of it, something about a donkey, a magistrate, and a mistake involving olive oil, and the group erupts in laughter that fills the tepidarium for a brief, glorious moment. Then, as on cue, it fades. The bathhouse accepts the noise, then gently puts it away. You step into the corridor, where the air cools just a fraction, and the sound changes again. The walls here are closer, the echoes quicker, sharper. Footsteps announce themselves, but politely. Water drips in a steady pattern, marking time better than any sundial. Drip, drip, drip. Each one lands like a reminder. You are moving forward whether you intend to or not. Ahead, the sound grows more structured, more purposeful. You hear low voices giving instructions, the rustle of cloth being folded, the soft clink of metal tools being set in place. This isn't chaos, it's preparation. The bathhouse is rearranging itself, like a stage between acts. You slow, not because you're unsure, but because the sound tells you to. Rushing would be wrong here. Rushing would be loud. And, as you follow the corridor's gentle bend, letting the echoes guide you like breadcrumbs, you realize something else, something quietly astonishing. You haven't thought about the outside world in a long time. No carts, no markets, no shouting, no wind. The bathhouse has replaced all of that with its own weather, its own language, its own time. Stone, water, breath, and echo. That's all that exists now. And the deeper you go, the more the sound promises that there are still rules you haven't heard yet. You follow the bend in the corridor, and the sound follows you, changing its shape like water poured into a new vessel. The bathhouse has many voices, but this one is quieter, more deliberate, like someone clearing their throat before speaking carefully. The echoes tighten, shorten, behaving themselves. Even the air seems to step more softly here. The preparation noises you heard earlier grow clearer now. Wood being stacked, stone being wiped, a bucket set down with a soft, controlled thump. These are not the sounds of leisure. They are the sounds of maintenance, the quiet labor that keeps pleasure possible. You feel like you've walked backstage, where the magic is repaired between scenes. A slave kneels near a drain, scrubbing, the brush making a rhythmic hush, hush, hush against the stone. It's hypnotic, steady, and no one talks over it. That's etiquette too. You don't drown out work. You let it exist. You let it finish. You pause without meaning to, listening to that rhythm, and something settles in you. This is the sound of continuity. The bathhouse existed before you arrived. It will exist after you leave, and between those 2 points, it will keep scrubbing, keep dripping, keep humming, indifferent to your personal timeline. There's comfort in that, a sleepy relief, like lying in a train compartment and knowing the rails will carry you whether you stay awake or not. A quirky tidbit slips in, uninvited but welcome. Some Romans believed the sound of constant cleaning in bathhouses kept bad luck away. Noise, in this case, was protection, a ward against decay, against neglect, against the creeping quiet that meant abandonment. Silence is what you heard in ruins, not in living buildings. You hear footsteps behind you, careful, measured, and you instinctively step a little closer to the wall, making space without being asked. The footsteps pass, and you never see who made them. That's success. That's fluency. You learn to respond to sound before sight, and the bathhouse approves, answering your movement with nothing at all. Silence here is praise. Ahead, the corridor widens slightly, and the echo loosens its grip. You hear voices again, but not the deep, relaxed murmurs of the caldarium or the playful splashes of the frigidarium. These voices are practical, focused. They speak in short phrases, in questions and answers, in instructions that don't need to be repeated. This is a working voice, the bathhouse's inner speech. A mainstream fact drifts into your awareness like a low note in a chord. Large Roman bath complexes employed dozens, sometimes hundreds of workers to keep them running. Heating, cleaning, water management, oil supply, all of it depended on human hands. The silence you've been enjoying is built on their noise, hidden carefully behind walls, timed so it never quite intrudes. Historians still argue whether bathhouse laborers were resented or respected, invisible or essential. Listening to how their sounds are shaped, allowed but contained, you suspect the answer is complicated. The bathhouse needs them, but it doesn't want to hear about it too loudly. You move on, letting the corridor carry you, and the echoes begin to overlap again. A hint of splashing from one side, a faint hum of heat from another, the brush of cloth from behind. For a moment, all the sounds stack on top of each other, and you feel suspended in the middle of the building's lungs, the place where breath is drawn in and sent back out. It's here, in this intersection of noises, that you realize the first lesson is complete. You've crossed the threshold not just of the bathhouse, but of its language. You know now when to slow, when to soften, when to disappear into the background hum. You've learned to hear etiquette before anyone explains it. And as you take one more step forward, letting the echoes settle around you like a familiar cloak, the bathhouse shifts again, subtly, almost imperceptibly, ready to teach you the next layer of its rules, deeper and quieter than before. The stone doors you entered through are a memory now, their groan softened into myth, their outside world erased by steam and sound. You belong to the echo, and the echo, patient and ancient, carries you onward. The echo carries you onward, and you don't resist anymore. Resistance would be loud. Resistance would ripple back at you in sharp angles, and you've learned enough now to avoid that. Instead, you let your body float forward on the sound the way a leaf floats on slow water, turning gently when the current tells it to, stopping when the pool widens. The corridor opens into a smaller chamber, one you didn't notice before because it didn't announce itself. That's how you know it matters. Important rooms in the bathhouse don't shout, they wait to be heard. The sound here is thinner, more precise. Each movement makes a clear statement. Each breath seems to echo once, twice, then vanish. The walls are closer, the ceiling lower, and the air holds the faint, clean scent of oil and stone. You step inside and immediately feel your posture change. Your shoulders lower. Your arms hang looser at your sides. This room asks less of you, but it demands accuracy. Careless sounds would bounce too hard here, reveal too much. A man sits on a low stool, eyes closed, while another rubs oil into his back. You hear the oil before you see it, a slow, viscous sound, like honey being poured into a bowl. Then the hands move, skin on skin, making a soft, rhythmic whisper that's almost hypnotic. No one speaks. This is not a room for conversation. It's a room for listening to touch. You realize you've entered one of the quieter rituals of the baths, the place where noise becomes intimate instead of communal. The bathhouse allows this, but only in pockets, like small caves carved into a larger mountain. Here, sound is not shared, it's borrowed. A slave waits nearby, holding a folded towel. You don't hear him breathe. You don't hear him shift his weight. He is stillness given shape, and you feel almost guilty for existing loudly in comparison. You take a step back, softening your movement, and the stone rewards you with nothing at all. A quirky tidbit drifts through your mind, as gentle as the oil's whisper. Some Romans believed being massaged in silence allowed the body to remember itself better, as if noise distracted the muscles from their proper shape. Watching the man's shoulders loosen under quiet hands, you almost believe it. You sit on an empty stool, careful, 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 and the stool barely sighs in response. That small success sends a warm pulse of satisfaction through you, quieter than pride, closer to relief. You are learning to move without announcing yourself, to exist without echo. The oil is offered to you without words. The jug makes a small, round sound as it's tipped, and the oil pools in your palm, cool and thick. You rub your hands together, slowly, letting the sound stay soft, respectful. Then you touch your own arm, and the sound of skin sliding over skin surprises you with its gentleness. It's not loud at all. It's private. It's yours. Historians still argue whether self-massage in bathhouses was common or discouraged, but listening to the room, you suspect the truth lies in the sound. As long as you do it quietly enough, no one cares. Etiquette is measured in decibels, not rules. Around you, the room breathes in tiny ways. A stool shifts. A towel is unfolded. Oil drips once, twice, then stops. Each sound is distinct, isolated, like stars in a clear night sky. You find yourself counting them without meaning to, not for order, but for comfort. Time stretches here. It thins. You could sit for minutes or hours and it would feel the same because nothing rushes you, nothing pulls you forward. The bathhouse has created a pocket where urgency dissolves, where even thought slows to match the pace of sound. Eventually, though, you notice something new, a change so subtle you almost miss it. The echoes from outside this room are shifting again. Voices grow slightly louder. Splashes return with more confidence. The bathhouse is turning, like a body rolling over in sleep. Closing time is not yet here, but it's approaching. You can hear it in the way people begin to move more often, in the way stools are nudged instead of avoided, in the way murmurs grow just a shade more animated. The building is gently waking everyone from its trance. You wipe the excess oil from your hands, the towel whispering softly as it absorbs the sheen, and you stand. This time, the stool makes a faint, approving sound, like a satisfied exhale. You nod to no one in particular, because nodding makes no sound at all, and you step back into the corridor. The echo greets you like an old friend, and you follow it, knowing that every sound you make is part of the bathhouse's long memory, a memory it will hold for a moment and then let go, as all good things are eventually let go, into the steam. The echo greets you, and you realize it knows you now, not by name, not by face, but by weight, by rhythm, by the way your foot meets stone without asking for attention. You step back into the main flow, and the bathhouse adjusts around you the way a crowd parts for someone who has learned how not to bump shoulders. The corridor is busier now, but the noise is different than before. It has direction, purpose. The random splashes and murmurs you heard earlier have begun to organize themselves into patterns, like a city waking up after a nap. You hear more footsteps, more conversations starting and stopping, more water being disturbed. The building is shifting from inward to outward, and the sound tells you before your eyes do. A group passes you, talking softly but excitedly, and you catch fragments of words: dinner, wine, someone's house, a story that clearly went very well in the telling. Their laughter rises, then immediately softens as if they all remembered at the same time where they were. You could almost hear the collective thought, not here, not like that. You move aside without breaking stride, making space because the sound told you to. You don't think about it, your body just does it. This is the moment you realize the bathhouse has trained you, not with rules, not with signs, but with echoes, with coughs, with the subtle discomfort of being too loud and the quiet relief of getting it right. A mainstream fact settles gently into your awareness. Romans believed baths were essential to civilized life, not optional, not indulgent. To skip them was to be rough, unsocialized, almost foreign. Listening to the careful choreography of sound around you, you understand why. This place teaches you how to exist among others without friction. It teaches you how to take up space without taking too much. You pass the entrance to the apoditarium again, and the sound has changed there too. Less clatter now, more folding, more finality. Clothes are being gathered, sandals adjusted. A belt buckle clicks once sharply, and the sound stands out like a shout. The man freezes, glances around, then smiles sheepishly and lowers his hands. Someone coughs lightly. Order is restored. You hear water being poured out somewhere, the end-of-day sound, not wasteful, but deliberate. Buckets emptied, basins refreshed. The bathhouse is resetting itself, preparing for another cycle, another wave of bodies, another layer of sound to absorb and release. Historians still argue whether Romans felt ownership over public spaces like this, or whether they simply borrowed them for a few hours at a time. Listening to the way people move, the way they correct each other with nothing more than a breath or a shuffle, you suspect it was both. The bathhouse belongs to everyone, but only if everyone behaves like it doesn't belong to them alone. You slow near a pillar, resting your hand against the stone, and you feel its warmth, its slight dampness, its indifference. The pillar has heard everything, louder than you, quieter than you, stranger than you, and it still stands, still holds the ceiling, still hums faintly with the heat from below. You wonder sleepily if it remembers individual sounds, or only the sum of them, the way a sea remembers waves without keeping count. A faint whistle drifts through the air, barely audible, and you follow it with your ears. It's a slave again, signaling another worker, the sound coded, casual, invisible to those who aren't listening for it. The bathhouse is full of these hidden conversations, layers of sound that overlap without colliding, like different dreams happening in the same room. You take a breath, and this time you don't hear it at all. That's the final lesson of this part of the bathhouse. When you no longer hear yourself, you've learned enough to move on. And so you do, drifting deeper, slower, softer, letting the echoes carry you not just forward, but inward, toward quieter rules, older sounds, and etiquette so subtle it barely exists, except in the way the stone answers you when you step. The bathhouse hums. You hum with it. And together, for a while longer, you make the night sound right. The night sounds right, and you realize the bathhouse has shifted into its evening voice, not closed, not open, but suspended, like a held note that could resolve in either direction. The hum is lower now, deeper in your chest, less in your ears. It's the kind of sound you feel when you lie awake in bed and hear a distant train pass, the vibration arriving before the noise and staying after it's gone. You drift toward the outer rooms again, not because you're leaving, but because the sound has changed its mind. People are slower now. Movements are deliberate. Even splashes feel thoughtful, as if the water itself is tired of being disturbed. The bathhouse is easing everyone toward an ending without saying so out loud. A man near the pool lowers himself in with exaggerated care, and the water answers with a gentle swell instead of a slap. No one laughs this time. Laughter belongs to earlier hours. Now there are nods, small smiles, sounds of agreement that don't need words. You hear the apodictorum breathing differently, less rustle, more folding, more final taps of sandals meeting stone. Leather squeaks softly as straps are tightened. Cloth whispers as tunics slide back over shoulders. The sound of dressing is always more intimate than undressing, you notice, because it signals return. Return to the outside world. Return to being seen. A mainstream fact drifts in like a final lesson. Romans often ended their baths with social conversation, lingering, letting the body cool slowly so the transition wasn't a shock. The sound of leaving mattered. If it was rushed, the day would feel rushed. If it was calm, the night would follow. You step into the changing room again, and the acoustics snap back into sharper focus. You hear everything. A ring set down, a belt buckle clicking carefully this time. Someone yawns, openly, loudly, and no one corrects them. Yawns are allowed now. They mean the bathhouse has done its work. You dress slowly, letting the fabric slide over skin, and the sound no longer embarrasses you. It's part of the ritual, part of the goodbye. Your clothes feel strange at first, too dry, too stiff, too loud. But you adjust, and they quiet down, learning their place again. Historians still argue whether Romans felt calmer after bathing or simply cleaner. But standing here listening to the room settle, you know the answer lives in sound. The bathhouse has tuned you. Your footsteps are softer, your breathing slower. Even your thoughts arrive less sharply, like they've been wrapped in wool. You move toward the door, and the hinge greets you with that same ancient groan, but it's gentler now, like recognition. Steam slips out around you, carrying the last echoes with it. And for a moment, the outside world sounds impossibly loud, impossibly sharp, like waking from a deep nap into daylight. Before you step through, you pause, not because of any rule, but because you've learned to listen before moving. Behind you, the bathhouse hums on, already forgetting you, already absorbing new footsteps, new coughs, new laughter. The sound closes over your absence like water. You step outside, and the door shuts. The noise of the city rushes in, carts, voices, wind, life. But something in you has changed. You hear it differently now. You hear space between sounds. You hear pauses. You hear etiquette where there used to be chaos. And as you walk away, the echo follows you just a little longer than it should. A soft memory of stone and steam and shared breath, fading slowly, gently, until even that disappears. But when you finally lie down, later, in the dark, and the world quiets again, you'll hear it return, that low, steady hum, and your body will remember how to listen. And without trying to, you'll sleep. You sleep, or at least you think you do. But the sound follows you into that soft, half-lit space where dreams aren't pictures yet, only feelings. The bathhouse hum is quieter now, but it's still there, a low vibration under everything, like the memory of waves after you leave the shore. Your mind replays it without asking, looping the echoes the way it loops a lullaby you learned before you had words. And in that drifting state, the bathhouse keeps teaching you. You hear footsteps again, not loud, not sharp, just present, and you realize you're walking once more through stone corridors, though your body hasn't moved at all. The sound is slightly different now, thinner, more distant, like listening through a wall. Night has settled over the baths. The fires still burn, but lower. The water still moves, but more slowly. The voices have thinned to a few murmurs, stretched wide across the rooms like embers spaced far apart. This is the hour few people remember, because most are already home, wrapped in blankets, thinking the day is over. But the bathhouse doesn't end. It only changes key. A slave drags a brush across the floor somewhere far away. The hush, 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 slower than before, almost sleepy. You hear the sound of water being poured carefully, not to refresh, but to clean. It lands with a softer splash than earlier, because even water learns to be quiet at night. Buckets are set down gently. Tools are arranged. The building is putting itself to bed. A quirky tidbit surfaces, as if whispered directly into your ear. Some bathhouses stayed open late, not for customers, but for the workers, who washed after everyone else had gone. Their bathhouse sounded different, quieter, lonelier, filled with echoes that had nowhere to hide. Listening now, you can almost hear it, the emptiness amplified, every movement speaking louder because there's no one left to absorb it. You float through this version of the baths, hearing doors close that you never noticed open, hearing steam release in long, tired sighs, hearing the hypocaust settle as fires are banked and ash is scraped away. Even stone sounds tired. It contracts slightly as it cools, making tiny clicks and ticks that no daytime bather ever hears. Historians still argue whether ancient people experienced buildings as living things, but in this quiet, you feel the bathhouse breathe. Inhale, water flows. Exhale, steam thins. Inhale, footsteps echo. Exhale, silence returns. The rhythm is slower now, but it's still there, steady and patient. You realize with a strange calm that etiquette doesn't disappear at night, it just changes shape. Silence becomes the rule instead of noise. Movement becomes careful instead of fluid. Even thoughts seem to tread more softly, not wanting to wake the stone. Your own breath mirrors it, slow and even, and the line between listening and sleeping blurs until it's hard to tell which you're doing. You hear the baths, but you also hear yourself hearing them. And that awareness fades like a candle turned down, not out, just low enough to stop demanding attention. Somewhere, far away, a final door closes for the night. The sound is soft, padded, almost loving. The echo lingers, then dissolves, and the bathhouse finally lets go of the day. The hum remains. It always will. But now it's part of you, stitched into your breathing, woven into the space behind your eyes. And as the last echoes slip away, you drift fully, completely, gently into sleep, carrying with you the quiet certainty that sound can teach, that stone can remember, and that even silence has etiquette if you listen long enough. The bathhouse fades, the echo fades, and the night holds you perfectly still.